What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. My name is Adam Palmer. I am your host. This is the Hobby News Daily Morning Minute. Today is Monday, July 7th, and on today's episode of the podcast, we are going to be talking about the rise of Pokemon and some of the interesting stats that have come out of grading over this first half of the year. So it's pretty crazy to think that we are already halfway through 2025, and I saw like a pretty terrifying stat that I think officially now we are closer to the year 2050 than we are to the year 2000, which is, I grew up in the 90s, and then the 2000s were obviously a lot of my teenage years. So it's pretty scary. Pretty scary stuff to think that that's the reality of time, I guess. I don't know. But now that I'm getting older, it's going by quicker. I guess that's what every old person says, or not old person, but older person than me, I guess. But either way, so we're halfway through 2025, which means data is coming out for the first half of the year. And grading data, which I've covered a bunch of times on this, and as we've seen over the coverage from the past, pretty much from this year, TCG is over the moon. It is absolutely insane what is going on with TCG right now. We are seeing just astronomical numbers from PSA, like blowing sports cards out of the water, really. And I think the newest stat that I saw that's very interesting that I'm going to put up on the screen here, 97 of the 100 top graded cards so far in the first half of 2025 were Pokemon. And I have two things here. First, for sports cards, this could be good, it could be bad. I think with the rise of TCG, and this is like a second resurgence. I mean, if you were to go back to 2020, that's when I think really, and it mainly could have been just that people were like cleaning their houses for the first time in decades, potentially, because they were all stuck inside. And what that led to was people finding their old Pokemon binders and then finding the cards or finding all of these things and getting them graded. And then there was these crazy $1 million sales of, Pikachu Illustrator cards with Logan Paul, or there was just like Shadowless Charizards that also were selling for a pretty drastically high price. And then you see GameStop coming in, or PSA and GameStop partnering, and GameStop has had sports cards for some time, but like I don't think we've seen like if you were to go into a GameStop, I think you're probably more likely to find Pokemon cards than sports cards. And I don't know if that leads to more people sending in their Pokemon cards to get graded with PSA. And realistically, I think that is where a lot of this volume is coming from that partnership. And then, you were still seeing pretty crazy sales with the sets, the first edition sets. And then they came out with the Evolution set, which was, I don't remember. I think it was like the 30th anniversary sets that came out like a year or two ago. Those were pretty popular. Those were cards that people were like scalping, like they were trying to find them online, or they were trying to find them in Targets or whatever, and then selling them online. And these Evolution boxes, like these were ones that, like, and this is based on, I don't have the sports cards, obviously, is my lane, so I'm not, these are just things that I've seen from being online, being on Twitter, being on Instagram, all just seeing people talk about Pokemon versus sports cards versus just TCG in general. And so I think a lot of people want to get these new cards graded. When you get a new set like that, and I'm kind of relating it a little bit to sports cards here, I think, because this is what you see, like when Prism comes out, or when one of the big sets for football or basketball or Top Series 1 or any of these, or Bowman or any of these big sets come out, you usually see a little bit of a bump. And I don't know if that is like maybe a indicator to get your cards graded at a different time of the year. Because when you're buying and selling, I think there are good times to buy and sell, and then there are not for specific sports. And it's kind of it is a cycle, but I think like things are changing in the sports card industry, and with Tops and Fanatics taking over football and basketball, I think that's going to lead to some of the cycling changing. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on too, if you are an active buyer or seller, and you are using kind of that strategy as part of when you like to buy and sell, is going to be like the cycles of these cards and when they come out, and the importance of knowing, like when a big set's coming out. Like if hypothetically, Prism basketball is coming out and you're looking to get some cards graded, it may not be the best time, because you're going to have to wait a little bit longer potentially, because everybody's sending in Prism basketball. I mean, there's a reason why back in 2021, when PSA originally shut down, that it was around the time when the LaMelo Prism basketball was coming out, which LaMelo, fine NBA player, I think serviceable for his team. And actually above average, pretty good. But still, like he was coming off of the Zion and Ja year where things just kind of got out of hand when it came to grading. Like it was just people were waiting like a year for cards to get graded. So it's definitely a good thing that PSA took a step back and refigured all this out, because looking at what's going on now, if they had not in back then kind of figured all of this out and figured out how to cater to this increase of demand, there's a pretty good shot that we would be seeing another PSA shutdown coming soon. Or at least in the, after this like crazy couple months. And at least from my knowledge, I haven't seen too many people complaining. Like obviously you're going to see here and there people complaining, which ultimately one or two people complaining leads to posts going viral, and then leads to potential narratives being created of PSA taking too long, which by all accounts, I don't think is the case anymore. Like, I think if you pay for the service, sure, there's probably going to be a little bit of leeway on one end or the other when it comes to how long it's going to take. But like, for the most part, I haven't really seen like, and even from personal experience, getting cards graded over the past, year or so. I've only had one. I only did one. I think it was like last. Well, actually, I guess it probably was a little bit longer now. I guess it was last summer when at the Fenway Card Show, I got some cards graded. They came back reasonably quick. But what this means for sports cards, because ultimately that's what you're listening to this podcast for, or watching the video. Ultimately, I think it's going to lead to hopefully more discounts and sales for people within the sports card industry. I mean, or it's going to lead to increased times, I guess. I hope that's not the case, but ultimately I don't really know. I think it could, that could happen. I wouldn't put it past, PSA to overextend themselves. I think, when Nat Turner came in, there was definitely more of a collector focused business model that was put in place. Cheaper prices, better turnaround times, more graders, more PSA 10s. I mean, I don't know, maybe. But I think ultimately that's what happens with these new sets that come out for Pokemon, the Evolution set or any of the other new sets that they're coming out with. And I think it could be similar with sports cards. I don't know if this is going to be a cycle where like the next half of the year is going to be all sports cards, or if it's just going to continue to be Pokemon. Because for Pokemon, they don't necessarily have that cycle. Like they don't have a beginning and end to their season. Like sure, obviously there's the show, but I don't think the show determines which cards. It's not like sports where it's like if a player plays well, their cards are going to be more in demand. I don't think the show is really like that, because I think the show still goes on, if I'm not mistaken. But ultimately, in the first half of the year, it's crazy that Pokemon has really taken over. And if I had to guess, the three cards that were they were probably Wembanyama cards, just because based on like 2024 numbers, it would make sense if people continued to grade that player. And he honestly, it's fortunate and unfortunate that he's going through sort of a cycle where, because he's hurt, there's a lot of speculation on his cards. And it's kind of similar to like when Zion kept getting hurt and he kept going out and people kept speculating. I think we're past, Zion being super crazy hyped now at this point. But either way, I think if I had to guess, the other three cards were probably Wembanyama cards, just based on his speculation and all of those things when he got hurt there at the end of the season. So we have a whole another half of the year to see what's going to happen. We'll see if maybe Tops and Fanatics taking over changes that and leans it more towards sports cards, or if 2025 is just going to be the year of Pokemon at PSA.